Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Ricecast. You know, I don't shout out enough our intro music done by the great Stan Collins. There's intro music that plays. Me and Pastor are sitting here recording. We don't hear it, but you guys hear it. It's a great guitar. It's all Stan Collins, or maybe it's all piano. Now I'm even blanking on it. But shouts out to Stan Collins for the Ricecast intro. And we are back here with another episode. We are in freezing Clearwater, Florida.
It's in the 60s.
It's in the 60s today, Pastor. I almost called in because I wasn't sure if the roads were in good working order.
We will get in the 70s today, but I think tomorrow we may not even get into the 70s. It may stay in the 60s.
Unbelievable.
Maybe like 68, which to people listening to us right now in New York and Chicago and all those places that do not enjoy the abundance of grace that we do, they hate us right now.
I would say to them, well, I get it. I get what you're going through now because I get up and it's 65. We're both in the throes of winter.
That's right.
Us
You're very
and
empathetic that way.
Chicago brothers and sisters. I had to get up early and start the car this morning. I didn't want to go out there into a cold car. Who knows what temperature it got to in the middle of the night, Pastor? Gotta get. If you're a Florida person listening, the note is, and we covered this some, get that jacket out, that scarf.
Yeah,
those
one jacket
boots.
you have, that light little windbreaker.
It out. This is our go time. This is not a drill. Today and tomorrow, in coats. You got a pea coat. This is the time. You might not have another chance the rest of the year. How you feeling today, Pastor Will?
Very good. Good. Excited about the series that we started. Excited about the Bucks in the playoffs. You know,
playoff season,
and so got to actually go to be at the game Sunday afternoon, and actually got to preach the chapel for some of the players last week, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
We have a Calvary member who actually works on the Bucks staff, Duke Preston, and he comes up to our East Lake campus. But Duke and his family are great folks, and he does a lot of great work with the Buccaneer organization.
And I'll say this because I don't think you will. The Bucks are now 2-0 when you do the chapel.
Well, that's true. I don't know if Tom Brady may have something to do with that, but I'll take whatever credit.
It's tough to say exactly who's responsible, but you were involved in two big wins.
Yeah.
They played great. They were absolutely routed the Panthers
this is the time it really matters. We it's win or go home, right? So we're all hoping we have a lot of sports to talk about over the next couple of weeks.
That's what we're hoping for. Hoping for another long playoff run for our Bucks, and it starts this week against Philadelphia.
Yep, playing the Philadelphia Eagles. So here's the sports trivia moment. The first playoff game ever that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in was at home, the old Tampa Stadium, against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, wow.
And I was there.
You were in the building.
I was there. Me and my brother were both there. We were kids. I was in high school, and it was their first playoff. It was their fourth season in existence. First time we'd had a winning record, and we got in the playoffs. We played the Philadelphia Eagles. Dick Vermeil was the coach. I think Jarowski was the quarterback. They called him Jaws, Ron Jarowski.
Oh, yeah.
And they were favored. We were the division champs of our division, but we were not favored. Mm-hmm. The Eagles were considered the better team. But we won the game, 24-17.
Wow.
In a thrilling upset, and went to the next round.
So whether you're doing the chapel or you're just in the building,
I should claim
the
that
mojo that you're bringing into the stadium.
We're not going to talk about the
strong.
26th Street and how many times I was there during that street.
Well, we had to get some things ironed out.
Yeah,
They're obviously ironed out now.
Yeah,
and it's going great. Shouts out to all the Bucks players and fans that I'm sure listen. Hoping for a long run. Yeah, so my Bucks Eagles history was the first Super Bowl run, the 2002. Remember we had to go up there.
We had to go. Yeah,
and it was cold.
Were you there for that?
I wasn't there.
Okay,
it was up in Philly, but we couldn't win in the cold. And this was 2002 whenever we won that with our first Super Bowl.
I still remember Rondé Barber. I think it was Rondé picking the pass off toward the end of the game and running it back, and it kind of sealed the deal. And you just knew at that moment, as he's running down the sidelines, you realized we're going to the Super Bowl,
right?
And
and we never won in the cold. It was just a given. If we were going up north in playoff time, we lost.
Yep.
And that one,
Philly had a great
time.
team that year, and so that was kind of an upset also.
Mm-hmm.
So this year we're favored. Let's hope that we still play the same way.
Yeah. Hey, we're hoping for big things. We need to get you into the building, I think, is the big takeaway. So anybody listening that wants the Bucks to win, there's an obvious path towards that. We need to get Pastor Willie in the building. But that's happening. You mentioned the series. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. We're during this series, you're going through what we have called, some in Calvary might be familiar with, the disciple maker tools. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we've been working on. It's really interesting. I mean, maybe worth a whole podcast just talking about the process of just the development of disciple maker, because I know this goes back a ways.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought, a lot of intentional energy has gone into this whole process.
Yeah, it really did, and it goes back, people wouldn't imagine maybe that it takes that much work and effort, but we were trying to ask, what is a tool? What is our vehicle for discipling our people to disciple others? Until it's transferable, you really don't have a tool. You can do a course, you can write a book. There are lots of great, and listen, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but we are, and all these tools, we adapted most of these, I think, from someone else. You changed some of the language at times, but what are the tools we really want every Calvary leader, every Calvary, ministry leader to know, so that it just becomes part of our culture? These are ways that we not only grow as disciples, but we can in turn reproduce them and disciple others. And we didn't want a course, we didn't want a curriculum, we didn't want a class. We wanted a process, a tool. And that's how we created Disciple Maker.
And these were just, like you said, tools. You could equip really anybody. They're meant to be drawn on a napkin potentially. They're not supposed to be very complex drawings.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have to.
We wanted something you'd heard it once. You probably had it.
Yeah.
And listen, we've talked about different ways in which it could be taught, or people could have groups, and we even spent some time casting vision for that last year, although, again, this has been a very unusual season with COVID. But and there's still ways people can do groups, but we wanted a process that was so kind of organic that it's one-on-one. It's two friends over coffee. It's maybe you're leading a group. Maybe you do have 3 to 5 people that you gather around. If you're young men and you're grabbing some young men, what are you going to do with them? How do you disciple them? And some people kind of intuitively get there, but I think a lot of people need, what do I share? Mm-hmm. And so these tools are a vehicle about what you can share to disciple others. And within each of these tools, there's a lot of opportunities to spend more time studying the Bible, etc., with a person, a group of people. These are things parents can use with their children. We really think this is a great tool for Calvary parents to teach their children. You wonder sometimes, after you read the devotional book or you buy a children's Bible and you read through it, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
My son has one, I think it's the Jesus Storybook or something.
Yeah,
it's fantastic,
really
fantastic. But you want, at some point when you're having conversations, tools. Mm-hmm. And these tools are things that we think you could hear them once and you get them, but at the same time, they're the kind of things you can come back to again and again and again and use for evaluation, use for discussion, even if in fact, when everybody knows them, it's even better. Mm-hmm. Because you say, okay, let's talk about the triangle today.
Right.
And everybody's with you. And now we can have a conversation about where are we strong, where are we weak, how do we need to grow. So these are really great tools which we want to get into the bloodstream of Calvary in every way.
Yeah. So Pastor taught a whole sermon on this last week. We'll post that in the podcast description like we always do. You can go back and check on that. But I wanted to dive in on this tool we talked about, which is what we call the Disciples Triangle. The Disciples Triangle, and it's kind of an idea. I think we were in the book of Luke was the passage that we referenced, and it's the idea of what does it look like? What does being a disciple look like? And we think we've articulated it. A disciple has 3 relationships, three relationships that they're working on. So I just thought we'd work through this with you. Again, you can go and you can watch the sermon to get kind of the full rundown that way. But I had some follow-up questions I thought might be good as people start to integrate this into their life, and then more importantly, as you mentioned, they start to share this with others. Now, at the top of the triangle is the way we articulate this here at Calvary is peace with God. Mm-hmm. That's what we said. It's the most important That's the in the passage you reference is Jesus in spending all night praying with God, which is a fascinating, worth a podcast all of its own. Jesus, God incarnate in the conversation with the Father. But we talk about peace with God, and I thought the most possibility for confusion here might be there are those who would say, I know how you get peace with God, and what they would articulate with that is like the plan of salvation, or how you say you make that decision. Mm-hmm. So I wondered if you might talk a little bit more. How do you differentiate? Where are the lines there? The peace with God, the idea of salvation versus an ongoing relationship that you're continuing to work on.
Yep. Now, again, as you referenced, this comes from understanding everybody has. When you look at people who are spiritually healthy, they have three relationships. Mm-hmm. They have, intimacy with God, community with believers, influence in the world. And, God kind of is up, church is in, the world is out. Mm-hmm. And as you said, the way we use the words peace with God, placing God's family purpose in the world. So it's very simple to understand. If you mess up the words, you can't mess it up. It's just God, church, and the world. Simple. Okay. Yeah. And healthy people are healthy in all three areas. So we're talking about that first one, peace with God. And as you said, and we try to say this, we just, sometimes you don't have time to spend on every point like you want to. Peace with God, it's like salvation. Multiple things are true at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so we need to sometimes press into it because we're limited with our language. We're limited in the way we can express ideas, which is why we have to try several ways sometimes to express a concept. Yeah. So the very idea of salvation is it something that happened or is it something that is happening? And the answer is both. In fact, there's a third one, and it's something that will happen.
Right.
So it is true to say I have been saved, if you've been saved. I am being saved is also true, and I will be saved. There's a past, present, and future context to salvation, all of which are true. So when we think about, sometimes the biblical words are salvation or justification. That's the past tense. I have peace with God. Mm-hmm. What you're really saying is you've been justified, that you believed in the Lord Jesus, and God saved you, forgave you, and according to Romans 5:1, we have peace with God through faith, through Jesus Christ. We have peace with God. So I have it. I have peace with God. So I would hope if you've ever been saved and someone said, do you have peace with God? You would say, yes, because it's true. You've been made a child of God. You have peace with God. Now, that's true. It is also true that salvation is a process. The biblical word for that is sanctification. Right. That means becoming holy, becoming more like Jesus. And the Bible teaches us that is an ongoing process where the Holy Spirit is working in our life through the means of grace to make us more like Jesus. We are in the process of being sanctified. And very few people, and no one correctly, but very few people would even dare to say, well, I'm already there. I've been sanctified. Well, that's pretty much evidence that you haven't, okay? Right. Because to me, the closer you get to the Lord, the more you realize how unlike Him you are and the more you need to grow. So there is this process. So when we talk about peace with God, yes, you can say I have peace with God, but we should also see it as this ongoing relationship. So you can, for instance, be a Christian who knows that God has saved you from your sin, but if you now allow sin into your life, unconfessed sin, something that grieves the Holy Spirit. That's what the Bible talks about, grieving the Holy Spirit. Well, do you have peace with God? Well, in the sense of, as much peace as you could have, no. Because right now there's an unsettledness. If you've ever disobeyed the Lord and and you've been convicted over your sin, well, there's a sense in which you don't have that peace, right? Right. Or you're not trusting in God like you should. You don't have that peace. So when you talk about peace in God, we want people to think about the salvation event in which I trusted Jesus and I am made right with God. That's justification. But we also want you to think about the ongoing process of sanctification, which is following Jesus right now. So that when we talk about peace with God as believers, we can evaluate ourselves. We can say, you know what? I have peace with God right now. I'm surrendered. I am trusting. I am believing. Or we need to be honest to say, you know what, I haven't really surrendered an area, or I'm struggling, or the Lord is grieving He's convicting me right now over an area, or I'm struggling with anxiety and the ability to trust Him. I don't have and we're not saying we're not saved. We're just saying that area of peace is suffering right now. So we're talking about our relationship with God. Peace is a great word to describe what it means to have a relationship with God. It's a Bible word. But there's a past tense that's settled, but there's an ongoing tense that is constantly being worked out.
Right. So you really, maybe a better way to think of it, based on what I'm hearing you say, is that moment of salvation, you point to that decision that's made, is really the beginning of this process. Whereas I think sometimes it's even been communicated. It's sort of the end. That would
my line. I like to say it's the end. It's the front end. Right. And another way of saying the same thing, a different way, is it's a point, like a period on a page. It's a point, but sanctification is a process. It's like an arrow out from the point pointing in a direction. So we need both. We need the point that says, I have peace with God because I've trusted Jesus. But we also need to be working on the arrow in our life that's pointing us to Jesus, which is the process of becoming more like Jesus.
Right. So this is the triangle that's at the top. We talk about that peace with God, and it's really good. You did go into this on the sermon as well. So if you go back and watch that, you can get more information there. But I think it's a good distinction.
And maybe we can post the diagram on the notes, or
we have the image.
You can see the image.
Yeah, we can put that in there. So then you said we said up, in, and out was another way we could do this. So in, way we would say that here is a place in God's family. So this is involvement and connection to a church. I liked what you had said there. And actually, Stephen had mentioned it the week prior. Like, this is the Christian life is one that's just not meant to be lived alone. Right. To do it alone is, so you got to have a place there. But I also couldn't help but notice, as you were talking about this, that there's when we talk about balance within the triangle, an out of balance here might be, what does that relationship with the church look like? Are you there because your friends are there? Are you there to network? Are you there? There are these ancillary benefits, which I don't think are necessarily bad in and of themselves. But if is it possible to get too far that way?
Yeah, it's possible to get imbalanced on all of it, which is why the triangle is a great image, because it shows perfect balance. A triangle shows, well, I guess if it's a perfect triangle, it shows
an equilateral triangle.
Thank you, equilateral. So you did I skipped math. The equilateral triangle shows everything in balance. Let me just say this: place in God's family is so important. What you said is so important, and I'm not trying to regress, but I don't want to pass over it, because someone asked me a question after the message, which is a really good question. When I was emphasizing the Christian life isn't made to be done alone; it's about belonging to a church, belonging. And by belonging to a church, all we're really saying is I'm committed to a group of people. I'm in community. By the way, I read a great Eugene Peterson line this morning. Eugene Peterson was giving advice on how to find the right church. How to find the right church. His advice was pick one and stay there. And, look, we all know there's exceptions and there are reasons people have changed churches. I get it. But there's so much truth in that statement that there's just no perfect church. Pick one and stay there. Community means you lean in. You lean in and you hang out. Now, you ask, can it get out of balance? Absolutely. Because church can become people's social environment for a lot of reasons. First of all, a lot of people just like going to church. People are nice. Typically, people are nice to you. Not always, but most of the time. Maybe, hopefully, they're maybe a little bit nicer than other places. I hope we are. People are, you build friendships just like anywhere else. People, they have clubs. They go to places, and it's why people go to certain neighborhood bars. Because it's the old Cheers song. Everybody knows your name. So you get to it. That becomes your thing. People know your name. You have friendships. You enjoy it. And if you're not careful, the out of balance is, yes, I can love going to church. It's fun. I can go. I like the people there. They do fun things there. They have good food on Wednesday night. They bring in Chick-fil-A. They, whatever. Pastor's a funny guy, nice guy, or whatever. But their relationship with Jesus is not that the triangle is not equilateral, because maybe their relationship with Jesus, they aren't reading the Bible on their own. They aren't really praying on their own. They're not growing as a follower. They're just like hanging out in this religious club.
Right.
Or the other corner, which we haven't got to yet, but the idea of a purpose in the world. They're not on mission. They're not serving. They're just kind of hanging out. So, yes, any one of these corners can be out of balance. I can even talk about, I wouldn't want to talk about ministries and use names, but you can even talk about ministries out there that are out of balance. Some that are all focused on, peace with God. They're focused on deeper life, discipleship. It's a good focus.
Yeah.
But they're not connected to the local church.
Right.
Or they're not about a mission or a cause in the world.
Yeah.
Or there are groups that are all about the mission and the cause, like they're doing service, doing things, but they're not connected to a church, or they're not rooted doctrinally. They get off track doctrinally. So the problem is that's why parachurch organizations tend to go to one of the three corners. And I'm not against parachurch organizations.
Right.
What they tend to do is go to one of the three corners and compensate for where they think the local church is lacking. The danger of that is they end up just becoming as out of balance as they think maybe a local church is. They're just out of balance in a different area. I really think it's the church that demonstrates the balance in all three areas. I would say to a parachurch organization, understand your lane and drive in it and make sure you are aware that you need people in the other lanes.
Yeah.
And just own it. Say, hey, we hang out in this corner of the triangle.
Right.
That's why you need to be in a local church. You can't just come to our meeting. You can't just come to our Bible study. You need to be in a church, not parachurch, a church, because you need all three. You need a place in God's family, and you need peace with God, and you need a purpose in the world.
Yeah, that's so good, and I think that connection to the church. You went in on this more in the sermon, but even talking about being a member somewhere, bring like that level of commitment. I love that Eugene Peterson quote, and I think it strikes me too. When you look at the three, it's been and this is definitely a sentiment that has been echoed more so recently. But the idea of I love Jesus, I just don't really care for the church, and it's just like I don't know how you can take the teachings of Jesus, the Bible, seriously and come to that conclusion.
Somebody asked me this question afterwards. I think I may have mentioned it, didn't get to the question. He asked me a question after the message. It was a good question. So really great question. He walked up and said, but what about Paul? He said, Paul traveled around from place to place to place. I said, good question. Great question.
Yeah.
Now, here's the answer. Everywhere he went, he was about the church. That's what he spent his life doing. He didn't just show up in a town, set up a tent, and do a crusade and leave. His whole focus was the local church. Read his letters. His whole focus, his letters are written back to a church that he founded, the church at Philippi, the church at Ephesus. He writes back to those churches. He is spending his life trying to teach them what to be as a church. So it's all in the context of the church. And several of his letters are known as the pastoral epistles, where he's actually writing, in one case to Timothy, another case to Titus, as leaders of the local church. So everything for Paul was in this context of church. So Paul's exhibit A. You need a place in God's family, and so important to have that balance in those areas.
And even that's a great example with Paul, because even in so many of those letters at the beginning and the end, you can feel through the writing his heart being there. I long to see you. I thank God every time I think of you. There was such a real connection that it was not this sort of cowboy riding into a town and riding out of the town.
Putting on a crusade and doing it. No, for Paul, he may have done what we think of as a public preaching event. He did that. We read that. And we, in our 20th century kind of nomenclature, was the crusades, where a guy would come in and do a crusade in town. Well, you need that. But for Paul, that was a means to an end, always. The end was not putting on a big event or having a lot of decisions. The end was a church, the church at Philippi. Yeah. That was the end. That he preached the gospel so that people would become disciples and they would be organized into a church. That was so important to Paul. It wasn't just like a tail end, now here's some things to help you as we leave town. No, Paul was all about the local church.
Right.
And he was just a missionary going to places where there were no churches to plant churches. And what you brought up a moment ago, yes, it's kind of been in vogue for a couple of years to disparage the local church. And Let us say, I think we've said it on this podcast before, this is a place where we can go into some of the nuances.
Yeah.
We get it. We get that some people have been hurt by churches. We get that some churches are not healthy. We get some churches are not doctrinally grounded. And I'm not talking about being nitpicky there. I'm just talking about they get way off. Or they're not on mission. So we get their reasons why people do change churches. And we get that there are people who have been hurt by churches. I hear stories, believe me, that just stun me and break my heart. So we get it. If you've been wounded and scarred and you're down on the local church, we understand why.
Yeah.
But we can't let you stay there. Because the idea of church, and there are a lot of kinds. You want a house church? Fine, have a house church. Okay, whatever. There are a lot of ways you can have churches. But the idea of leaning into a community of believers is so important. It is part of the experience of being a Christian.
Yeah.
Again, you want a small church with 25, 30 people? Okay, that's fine. That's going to have weaknesses and it's going to have strengths. You want to be in a mega church with 10,000 people? Great. That's going to have strengths and it's going to have some weaknesses.
Yep.
Just because we all do, just like every human has strengths and weaknesses. Every church is going to have strengths and weaknesses. But the idea of being a part of a community of believers is absolutely essential to being a Christian. And the Bible doesn't know anything about a relationship with Jesus that is set apart from being connected to the body of Christ.
It's good. So then the last point of the triangle. So we did the top, which was up, was peace with God, in, place in God's family. You say this one as out. Here at Calvary, we use the words purpose in the world. So my question here for you on this one, there is and you mentioned this in the message, there is a great commission that is to everybody, all believers. We're all to be doing this. Purpose in the world. You wouldn't be wrong to say this is your purpose in the world.
Correct.
And I think you even broke that down.
To make disciples, yeah.
You even broke it down into 3.
Yeah, love your neighbor, share the gospel, make disciples.
There you go. And so we all have that. We all have that mandate. That's I even love the idea. I've heard it as you go. Go into all the world, meaning as you everywhere you go. This is a constant thing. I wondered, though, because you did touch on this, I wondered if you might expand on it a little bit more. When we talk about a purpose in the world, something that might ignite us to contribute, a problem we see in our community, maybe something like that really we're very passionate about. Some people here at Calvary have a lot of people passionate about foster care and adoption and that type of ministry. But I've wondered, and I've talked with friends my age, I'm in my 30s, it seems like there's so much wrong now. There's so many societal ills, so many issues that we're made aware of all the time. How do you go about? How do you not try to help everything all the time? How are you not, trying to solve every problem every moment of the day? How might you dive into, hey, this is really something maybe God's uniquely put me in a position to help with or something that's really – because then it's like, to me, I almost struggle with sometimes, well, you're passionate about this, you should help, but then you feel bad because you're not doing enough over here. I'm not helping with this issue in my community. And then I'm doing a little bit there, but I'm not helping out over there at all.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're not going to fix the problems of the world. You're not going to fix poverty. You're not going to fix every disease. You're not going to be able to solve the problem of homelessness. Just understand, we are in a broken world. But we don't want to let us become cynical and apathetic either.
Right.
I like what one of the things Andy Stanley says that I like is do for one what you wish you could do for all. So you need to, on the one hand, not be naive in your idealism. If I could just get a couple folks together, we would solve homelessness.
Yeah.
No. The problems of that are deep, complex, because you're talking about systemic poverty there. But that's one problem, idealistic naivete. But the other problem is this apathetic cynicism, which is, well, since you can't solve it, no need. I'm not going to help that guy.
Yeah, right.
That's wrong too, because you could help that guy. You could help that one person. So you want the balance between those two places.
Yeah.
And in terms of finding your sweet spot, here it is. Imagine if we draw a completely different diagram. Imagine it's 3 circles, but there's a place all the circles intersect. There's a place only 2 of the circles intersect.
Yeah.
But there's a spot in the middle where all 3 intersect.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. And here are the circles. The first circle is who you are. Your own aptitudes, your own abilities, your own personal makeup. how God shaped you to be. There are things you get passionate about. There are problems you see. There are things that you get animated about that not everybody gets as animated as you do.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're unconcerned about other things.
Right.
It just means this one hits you big.
Right.
This one gets your attention. And you know what? Somebody else gets excited about something else. That doesn't make them wrong. It makes you different. And if we were all the same, well, then we wouldn't need each other. So first of all, where are you shaped? What gets you motivated? What makes you angry when you see injustice or unfairness? What motivates you?
Yeah.
The second circle is your local need. Look around and see what's in front of you, what's in your community, what's in your church, what is around you that you see that can be done. And the third circle is God's eternal purposes, that God is in the business of reconciling all things under Christ. Now, when you get an intersection between all three, that is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
For instance, let's say you're concerned about helping people who are in poverty, let's say, systemic poverty. You're motivated by that for whatever reason.
Sure.
That motivates you. You're happy. You care about other issues, but that's the issue that motivates you. Okay, great. Then you look around your area and you say, well, it's one thing to care about this big problem. Is there somewhere in my area that I can do something? Somebody that is maybe feeding people or maybe doing job training, or is there a ministry that's really focused on that?
Yeah.
Okay, there's an intersection. Now I look for the third circle. Is there a gospel-centeredness there? Do they lean into the purpose of God? And are they, in the midst of this ministry, also sharing the gospel, trying to get people in church, trying to get people not just where they have a job, but where they have a relationship with Jesus? If I get all three of those, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Now, if I only have two of them, I can understand that. Maybe I bring that third. Maybe I'm in a secular organization. I'm serving in a group that really isn't gospel-centered.
Sure, yeah.
But for whatever reason, I really like that group, and it's right in my area, but I'm going to bring my gospel passion to it. And as long as I can, I'm going to, as long as I'm not limited, I'm going to share the gospel, do what I can do. But when you really want to make the biggest difference, look for a place that intersects with the gospel-centeredness, a gospel mission in the world to introduce people to Christ, meets a local need, and intersects with your personal passion. That's what you're looking for. And when you find that intersection, it ain't going to be 10 things. There's 10 things you could be doing.
Right.
You're going to be finding that one thing.
Right.
That where all those circles intersect in your life and you go, boom. Now, I would rather you go deeply into one purpose, one thing, than go superficially into 5 or 6 or bounce around every other month at this. We have people that serve in our community center. That's their thing. That's what they do. They care about people who are struggling in poverty and need food and are under-resourced. They understand it's a gospel place where they can share the gospel and intersects with their personal need. Other people in our church go, hey, I'm glad we're doing that. I'm glad we're doing that. But I'm much more concerned about foster care. And other people say, hey, I'm glad for what we're doing there, but I'm much more concerned about this area over here.
Sure.
So wherever there are needs, there are opportunities to serve. You're looking for where those three things intersect.
And I'm so glad you started that where you did, because that's kind of my fear, is that there's so much communication, there's so much information available for all the things that are wrong in your community that I think it can breed apathy. You can get to a point where
that's
you're like,
what happens. You just check out.
I'm going to make a difference anyway. So what?
You get one guy who's overwhelmed because he can't solve. And what happens? You start out an idealist, and before long you get overwhelmed,
right?
Because you can't fix everything.
Yeah.
So you have these idealists that they're usually younger because they just now seeing the problem. They want to make a difference, and we love them, but they can get on everybody else's nerves because they want to know why you're not doing everything they're doing.
Right.
And but the bigger problem is on the other side is so many people have just checked out.
Yeah.
Say, I can't make it. Well, you can make a difference in one person's life. You really can. You may not eradicate whatever problem it is that really angers you in our county.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can make a difference in one person's life. And you know what? You do change the world when you do that.
That's right. And there are so many ways to serve. Like there's so much you can be involved in. You mentioned a couple there. We have local school partnerships that are always in need of support. There's so many things that you can be involved in.
That's what our Equipped to Send seminar that you'll hear us. When you come to Starting Point, you'll learn about that. We have an Equipped to Send seminar that goes on every month, and that's what we make people aware of all the things we're doing. We could sit here all day and list them.
Right.
Maybe not all day, but we could sit here for a while and list them. From local schools to the community center to foster care, many, many opportunities. Mm-hmm. And we try to make you aware of those so that you can get involved and serve. So
next, Equip to Send's coming up here in a couple of weeks, but really lean into that this year. I think that's such a good goal. We talked last podcast about who will I serve this year. And this is a good thing to lean into. Like Pastor was saying, I love that idea of that Venn diagram with these. Where do these things intersect? Where am I coming from? What are my past experiences might lead me to be more empathetic towards people in a certain situation? Lean in on those areas and really seek that out, because you're looking for balance in that triangle. Again, the takeaways are the triangle, the disciples triangle, and then balance within that triangle. Don't allow yourself to drift. Hey, if I'm reading the Bible 13 hours a day and this is going great. Well, it's really wonderful. That's a very good thing, but you're out of balance. You're leaning too far towards the top. So we talked about that, but it's a good thing. Great tool to have, to share. Again, we'll put the link in the podcast description for the last sermon. We'll put a link in there that you can get a look at the triangle itself. And I think that's where we'll wrap up for today. Pastor, thank you so much for going in on the Disciples Triangle a little bit more. We'll be back with another tool this coming Sunday. Hope that you can join us. We're in our new service times, 9 and 10:45 at all of our campuses. Or you can join us online. We know a lot of people. There's still a lot of COVID going around in our community. If you're not going out, we'd love for you to join us online, 9 and 10:45. And we'll be back with another episode of the podcast here very soon.